All right, if you are a YouTube member or a Patreon backer, you're getting this video a couple days early. I'm trying to spread out my Stable Diffusion videos so I don't have like 4 or 5 dropping on the same hour. So I don't know, maybe I'll play with doing more of this in the future. Thanks to everyone that backs me. I really appreciate it. So I want to look at how to use Stable Diffusion using their default Collab notebook. For those of you that are not familiar, Stable Diffusion is sort of the newest, latest, and greatest text-to-image tool. Unlike maybe DALL-E or ImageGen or other things, it's also made by a bunch of open source teams, which is kind of cool. So they just released the first public weights. I assume we'll probably get more, and we'll get more tools in the near future. So they released a Collab notebook. I want to walk through how to do it because there's a couple little tricks you have to know about before getting into it. So we'll go through how to use the Collab notebook. We'll use just like the first half of this notebook. There's a bunch in here. I definitely recommend reading it. I gave it a quick skim. I think there's some really helpful stuff in here and some links to other cool things. But now the weights are public. So maybe yesterday, the day before, if you had heard about this, you would have to sign up to get a research license. They would have made it available to you. I believe you can still sign up as a researcher, and they might give you preview access to new weights or new tools as they release. But as of today, they are making the actual weights public, so anyone can grab them. So they released a couple of different tools. They released a Collab notebook, which is what we'll look at here. They have a Hugging Face Space, which is a super easy, lightweight tool to play with. And I also found a link to a thing called Dream Studio, which is like their sort of version of Runway. So lots of opportunities and places to play around. So the Dream Studio video is going up like as we speak. It's literally uploading right now. Anyone will have access to that. The Collab notebook is the next thing I'm going to play with, and I'll probably also record a demo of the Hugging Face Space. But for now, let's start with Collab. So if you don't know what Collab is, please go watch my other videos first. This won't be an intro to Collab. This will be just sort of looking at the Stable Diffusion notebook that they publicly just released. So like anything, we'll go ahead and we'll hit connect here first. So you need to hit reconnect up here, or you can just run the first cell. We do need a decent GPU. I believe the default is that it needs to be at least 10 gigabytes. So if you have a local GPU, you might run into issues. In this case, because I have a V100, this should be very fast. So one of the cool things about Stable Diffusion compared to other diffusion models like Disco or other things is this one's pretty fast. And this notebook does explain why. I won't get into it in this video because I just want to play with stuff and sort of show you how Collab works. So next thing we're going to do is we need to install these tools. Hi, Bug. So we need to install diffusers and a couple other Python pip installs. So let's go ahead and run this. While this runs, the other thing we need to do is that you need to have a Hugging Face account. So go to huggingface.co. And if you go to huggingface.co, you will not see this. You will see something else. You'll need to log in and create an account. So go ahead and create an account. And then the next thing you'll want to do is you'll want to head over to the model card for it, which is this link here. Just open that up in a tab. And since I've already accepted the terms of service, I've already gotten access to this card. For you, I think there's going to be something where you have to like go through here and actually say, yes, I approve, or I understand the license requirements and other things. So in this case, you're not seeing exactly what you will see, but you're seeing something approximating this. And once you've agreed to the terms, this card will appear. Once you have that, that means you've essentially agreed to their terms of service, and then you can get access to the weights. But there's one other trick you'll need to do, which I'll show you in just a minute. All right, cool. So all of that has been installed. Next, we need to run the next cell. I guess this is Collab disables external widgets. So this does some fun thing to get around that. So we'll go ahead and run this. And now you need to log in. So this is something that I haven't seen really that frequently using Collab, but you do need to log in using your Hugging Face account. Now, this does not mean you're going to give Collab your username and password. Instead, what you're going to do is generate a token, and that token will need to be pulled in here. So I believe when you run this, you'll say, yep, I need a token. So you're going to go ahead and create a token. So let me show you how to do that. So to do that, you're going to go back to Hugging Face. You're going to go to your account, and you're going to go to your settings. And in here, you'll see access tokens. You'll see here I've already created one for Stable Diffusion. Since I don't want y'all to have my token, I'm going to create a new one. So let's just call this test Stable Diffusion. So I'm going to delete this as soon as we're done here, so none of y'all can creep on my tokens. I believe you just need read access. So let's just hit generate token, and then we'll copy that, and then we'll go back to our Colab notebook, and we will paste this in here, and you'll hit login. And now you'll see login successful. Your token has been saved to root.huggingface/token. There's some error messages here. I haven't need to use this. I guess if we want to like save them directly into Git, you could, but we'll skip this. So next is we need to set up a couple pipeline systems, and the other thing is we need to download all of our models. So we're going to go ahead and run this cell. That just downloads our models for us. And there is a note here that you could change the type of model if you want the highest possible precision. This by default uses the half float version of the model, which just means it can run on like even a T4 or a really small GPU. I think what I've seen is it can work at like a 10 gigabyte GPU. I think I've seen it quoted 7 gigabyte GPU. So if you have a local version, you could also connect this to that. I would say Collab free is probably going to give you a T4, which is good enough to use here without having to worry about it. It will be slow in terms of image generation, but probably still faster than using Disco or something. So at this point, we're just downloading all the model weights. If you do want to use the highest version or the highest precision version of your model, what it says to do is it says to remove this, and you just leave that in. I don't know what the gigabyte or VRAM GPU requirements are for the highest precision version. Some on a V100, I would assume it would work, but maybe I even need an A100. That would seem a little crazy for them to set up a Collab notebook that could only work with A100s, because I haven't gotten one in like 3 weeks, but maybe that's the case. So let me know. This is for this demo, like I'm just playing around, so maybe someone else try it and let me know if that works for them or not. But anyway, at this point, let me undo that there a little bit. Yep. So at this point, we've now installed all of our models. We'll make sure we're using the GPU. I guess maybe there's a CPU version. When I tried to skip this cell, it gave me an error message. So I believe you have to use the GPU. So in this case, we're just going to set it to GPU. And now we can actually generate our first image. So this is pretty straightforward. There are some other options further along that we'll look at it and how to play with those more. But for now, let's just start with a really simple prompt. So we'll go ahead in here and let me just say a dog riding a dolphin. And then we want to save this to dog riding dolphin. So that's pretty much it to do a single image, right? So you'll just change out the prompt, and then you'll run this cell, and then you'll tell it where to save the image as to what name. So you can run this. Let's see how long this takes. So executing 1 second. Okay, that is not a dog riding a dolphin, but it is a dolphin. So, not the perfect text prompt. If you've tried my other demos, you'll see that there are better versions of this, but it's a pretty photorealistic dolphin. So in this case, that took 13 seconds, which is not bad. That's pretty fast. I mean, I'm on a V100, so it should be pretty fast. But compared to, I don't know, Disco or other tools, like that's still much faster. One note is your images by default are 512 by 512. We'll look at a way to change that in just a minute. But so even you get slightly higher resolution than you might out of, say, something like Disco, which I believe usually defaults to 256 by 256. So already we are starting to see some of the benefits of this, but maybe also some of the drawbacks, right? Like this didn't give me a dog riding a dolphin. Let's try changing this up. So a dog riding a dolphin, fantasy. Oh man, I'm trying to type around my mic. fantasy illustration. Let's try this. And you'll notice that was much, much faster this time, in part because it probably had already like built up some stuff in cache. And this is a much better illustration, or like I actually do get a dog riding a dolphin this time. So, this is a great example of changing the text prompt might get you something. The other thing to know is that behind the scenes, there's a random seed being applied to these. So every time you run this, you should get a different image. Yeah, so this time it's taking like 5 or 6 seconds. But it still gives me a photorealistic version, and there's no dog riding a dolphin. So I think there's something like, it seems like Stable Diffusion is definitely pushing toward realism, and that's what I've heard everyone sort of say about it. Let's go back to our fantasy illustration. Okay, so kind of a doggish looking thing, or a dolphinish, doggish looking thing kind of merged together. I have seen a lot of comparisons between Midjourney and DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and Disco. Like, I've seen a bunch of comparisons, and I would say like people generally say Stable Diffusion looks more photorealistic, but there's clearly some drawbacks as well. So in this case, you kind of have to play with these things and see what each tool gets into. Just another shout out for my class I'm going to start teaching at the end of the middle of October. We're going to go through all this in that class. So if you're interested in learning more there, you can sign up via Patreon or YouTube, or in a couple weeks it'll be public for people to sign up for. Okay, so that's sort of just basic image generation, but we might want to set up a manual seed. So this is how you would utilize manual seeds. What manual seeds means is that every time you use the same seed value and the exact same text prompt, you should get the exact same image. So let's go ahead and try this. We're going to grab our text prompt here. And this is going to use, let's set it to manual seed of 0. And I guess it's using the prompt from up here. So if I wanted to change the prompt, I could just drop it in here. Let's run this. So this is seed 0. And if I set this as seed 1, I get a different image. Is that Dog the Bounty Hunter? I don't know where that's coming from. But that is a different dog riding a different dolphin. If I go back to seed 0, I should see my previous image exactly. Sure enough, there I do. So using seeds allows, again, like we'll talk a lot in my class about how to maintain control over images. This would allow you to say, I want to use this seed, but maybe I want to add a little bit of a different prompt here. So let's say like trending on ArtStation. So the cool part of this is like if I remember the prompt and the manual seed, I should get the same images back. So sure enough, I get something a little different. So this allows you to sort of play while also not destroying your previous results. Okay, so many of you know that the biggest thing about diffusion is the number of steps you run it for. As you've played with maybe, say, Disco, you'll know that steps has a big influence on how long it takes to generate the image, but also on the amount of detail you have. So you can set these up with different numbers. So the way to see this here is, let's go back to, I kind of liked our seed 1. So let me just grab this prompt again and paste it in here. So kind of like seed 1. And I think it was just this. And let's, instead of running this for 50 steps, which is the default, let's run it for 100 steps. Now you could check to see where the default was because it's set up here, right? So at 51, it generated your image. So that means the steps were 50 total. So we're going to run this with a couple more steps. We'll run this here. Now it should take a little bit longer to generate my image, right? Because the more steps you do, the longer it takes. But the other thing is I should get a better resolution of an image. So here. Maybe I got better detail, maybe not. By default, they say like 50 is generally what they recommend. So anything over 50, you're very likely to get like maybe just subtle more detail. The other side of it is if you want to do like, let's say 10, it should generate a lot faster, but you might get something that looks a little bit messier. Yeah, and sure enough, you'll kind of see it like doesn't really feel finished. So maybe let's step this up to like 25. Now this is important because let's say you're on a T4. A T4 is like 4 times as slow as a V100. So it might actually matter to you to be able to play with this at a much slower speed. Faster, because you've set the number of steps lower. This is also great for just sketching. If you're trying to get to like a place where like you have a good idea of what the sort of shape of the overall image is, you could use this to sort of play with a bunch of versions, right? So let's say I'm just trying to find something where it's fairly well centered in the background. Like maybe this is not a good example, or like I just don't like the overall color palette of this. This would allow me to sort of quickly sketch out a bunch of different versions by playing with the seed value. Then once I like one, like let's say I do like this and I want to get better resolution or better detail, this is where I might run something like 50 steps. Yeah, and you'll see it's actually much nicer. I lose some of the second eye or whatever, and I do get a dog. It looks like my dog is surfing while my dolphin is jumping. But again, it's sort of like you can kind of start to see how you might play with this. And I bet if we crank this up, let's do 100. I want to sort of see if I can get maybe the second dorsal fin to disappear. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so we got rid of that second dorsal fin. It kind of became a wave, I guess. I don't know. It's like a wave in the sky. Our dog turned into something else that is another dolphinish thing. So you just get a different result with it. And maybe it's better detail, maybe it's better realism, but it's also different. And that's sort of the key thing is like, again, as you play with these, you want to sort of understand how each one of these elements influences the image in a way that gives you a little bit more sense of control. Because I don't know, in my case, I make a lot of illustrations for art directors or whatever. And they're gonna say like, I like that image, but like, can we have it be less screwed up? And then I'm gonna say like, okay, let me try to make it less screwed up. Let me crank this up to like 200. See if I get a different image that way. So the more you can kind of control these things and isolate these elements, the better off you'll be. And I like how this notebook is set up because it really does add a new layer every time it goes through a cell. That's really helpful to sort of understand what each component in this code does for you. All right, last section, it looks like there is also a thing called guidance scale. It looks like guidance scale is going to be set up in the last section of this notebook. So guidance scale, for those of you who are familiar, means how strong of a correlation the image should have to the text prompt. So if you crank up the guidance scale really high, it's going to try to match it exactly, but that sometimes has some drawbacks. If you set it lower, you'll get a little bit more of a loose correlation to the image, or to the text, sorry. So you can play with that a little bit as well, I assume. Let's go to the last section here. That's interesting. Let's go down here and see if I see guidance scale. So yep, so there is a setting for guidance scale here, and then you can see when you pass in where does guidance scale go? Looks like it goes in here. So there's some nice, for those of you that are really interested in seeing how the code works for this, you can actually go in and see behind the scenes how this works. I might cover this in a later demo, or maybe it becomes like an advanced lecture for my class coming up. But for now, there is a bunch of other options here. So you'll see height and width, which we'll look at in a second, guidance scale, as well as batch size. So there's a bunch of different things we can play with. Let's go back up to our pipeline. We'll close this. I actually want to leave that open. Okay, so in here, where did we leave off? Okay, so if you want to generate more than one image at a time, you can use this code. So there is a way to set up different images. Usually you can really only fit 3 across a desktop screen like this, so I'd probably leave it at 3. But we can go in and grab our code from here. Oops, I want to grab the prompt. And the key here is, if I paste in my previous prompt, you'll see the difference is that these are wrapped in brackets. So we need to wrap these in brackets, and then we need to multiply it times the number of images. And this is to generate our prompt array. My guess is that what you could also do here is you could set up 3 different prompts. So you could say one that is, let's look at that next. We'll come back to that. I don't want to jump too far ahead. Okay, so in order to do this, you actually need to run this cell. For those of you who have maybe played with some of my Collab classes before, this looks pretty familiar. It's a way to generate a grid of images. So we'll run this cell in order to actually define this function. And then let's output this. We'll run this. And I think this will take 50 times 3. I believe that's how these tools work, but let's see. There's our first image. Okay, so it actually did generate 3 images based on that. So we now have 3 different images, and maybe this is a way for us to start to go in and grab a bunch of those different ones to sort of see how they work. The other thing I think you could do here, which is what I'm interested in seeing, is I believe you could just take this prompt and you could pass in different versions. Let's say a dog riding a dolphin. Need to wrap that in quotes. And let's say a dolphin riding a dog. And so here you'll see we have our fantasy illustration, a dog riding a dolphin, and a dolphin riding a dog. So now I think we can kind of see here. Let's try to prompt this a little bit. Furry dog riding a dolphin, a dog riding a dolphin, and a dolphin riding a dog. Let's try this again. I want to see if I can remove the idea of a human riding a dolphin. There's probably a way to do negative prompts within Stable Diffusion, but I haven't really looked up that yet. Okay. I guess, well, this is the first example of what happens when you type in content that it doesn't believe you can use. If I had to guess, my guess is that because I added the word furry, that gets blocked. That's kind of frustrating. Guess we can get to the ethical side of how this works, but let's try a fuzzy dog instead. So a furry dog. Run it again. So we'll see that even though these weights are public, they're still being run through the Hugging Face API or some similar API, or maybe it's the Stable Diffusion API, and they're doing the Dolly thing of actually like blocking not safe for work images. I have to say that's not how I would want to approach it, but I can kind of understand. All right, cool. So now we have our fuzzy dog, which that looks more like a fuzzy dog. The dolphin is also kind of dog looking. And then we have, we're back to our human riding a dolphin. And then we've got our dolphins in space, which are not riding a dog at all. Okay, so clearly some of the ways these tools work are not perfect. Lastly, we can, or actually, guys, no, not lastly. I want to see if I can also save out my prompt or my manual seed. Let's try this. Pipe equals prompt. So let me, yeah, okay. So let's paste this in here. So for those of you that are interested, oops, not there. The thing we want to try to see is if we can use the exact same seed across all of these. So we've got pipe, we've got generator equals generator. Let's see if this works. Okay, I don't think that actually works. What I was hoping to do is actually get the seed value for each of these images. So we got the exact same image across each one of these. We'd probably need to rewrite the code in a different way. What this is probably doing is it's saying this is manual seed 10, the first index, manual seed 10, the second index, manual seed 10, third index. So I was hoping we could build ourselves a really fun little quick functional sort of prompt generator like sample here, but it didn't really work the way I wanted it to. All right, you learn, sometimes you fail. Okay, so if you want to do this across n by m images, you can also do that. So if we want to do 3 by 2, we can go in here and grab our prompt again. This. And generate this. And now here you will see that it generates every step, or like basically every your number of steps. It is able to generate as many as you have across, but it actually will take a in this case twice as long for the number of rows. So if I were to make this 4, it would actually be 4 times as long as the 3 rows. So here you can see, that one's pretty amazing. I might have to download this one. Save image. Oh, that actually gives me the whole grid. Okay, cool. That works. This is sort of an example of how you can begin to build up more and more of these, right? And if I wanted to make this like, sort of the crayon version, I could do 3 by 3. Now this will take probably 12 seconds times 3. My first version is 12. Second version will take another 12 seconds, and my third row will also take another 12 seconds. Why is my phone blowing up while this is working? Anyway, we've now generated a bunch of images. And you'll see these are different seeds from previously. So again, I'll have to dig into play with how the seed generator can work or be held so we can sort of like update this as it goes along. But here you go. This is now my crayon 3 by 3 grid. So that covers grids. Let's look at how to change our width. So by default, it is 512 by 512. Anything that is larger than that will likely repeat images, meaning your overall global coherence, as they mentioned, is lost. Now, the reason for that is basically like they take the noise space and stretch it, and they look at 512 by 512 segments. So what you'll notice about a lot of the stable diffusion images is that everything is centered in these images. And if you go outside of the 512 by 512 range, you will get stuff that is non-centered. And that you can sort of see here in their example. So let's try this one more time here with our good old prompts. And there is a requirement that all of your height and width are 8 by or multiples of 8. So in this case, I'm still getting a pretty good centralized object, but I'm starting to see multiple people and even sort of like a reflecting of my dolphin. I really don't know why all these people have red hair. Super weird. Let me go back to my fuzzy dog. There's clearly something in the training data that says dogs are humans with red hair. Okay, So now I have a weird looking multi-dorsal dolphin. Um, so you can also begin to play with your height and width. And this is, what a lot of people really want, is something that allows you to give you non-square outputs. I will say you're more than likely to get better results with squares because it's not doing sort of this stretching or trying to multiply the number of image areas. So if you want that really clean, crisp looking realism sort of image, you definitely want to keep 512 by 512. You'll get the best looking result that way. But if you want to play with it and get a little abstract, you can play with the height and width here. So that just sort of covers the Colab for Stable Diffusion. If you are interested in learning a lot more, this is a really, really great section to to explain how Stable Diffusion actually works, how it differs from other diffusion models. I highly recommend reading through this. I will very likely do another tutorial on something like this, but it's a little different, and it does allow you to write more controlled things. So there's a ton of stuff in here. If you are very familiar with writing code or having written a little bit of code around using text-to-image, using Clip and other tools, you will find this very valuable, and I highly recommend doing that. But I've already been recording for like 20 minutes now, so I'm just going to stop this demo here. Again, this is the type of stuff that I will be teaching in my class. I know I keep hitting this up, but I actually think that class will be really fun. I haven't really done a class on full text-to-image yet, so I think it'll be pretty exciting to really dig in deep into that sort of topic. So if you're interested in that, it's available to you as a Patreon or YouTube member, doing this video early, but it'll also be available to the public probably next week or the week after. So I hope you play around with this. Again, this was literally released today. I'm already recording a video for it for my backers because I love y'all so much. But I would expect big changes on this. So, to wrap up, if this is all you want out of the tutorial, feel free to leave. But if you want sort of my take on Stable Diffusion as it is today, I would still sort of stick with Disco in a lot of reasons. One, Disco has the init image tools. It has really nice video tools. It's got a bunch of options. I expect now that the Stable Diffusion weights are publicly available, likely the Disco team will grab those weights and start using them. So it'll be another option within all the other options within Disco. I would also expect things like init images and image sequences to video, other things will come very, very quickly, if not like this week. I'm literally recording this on Monday, August 22nd. I won't be surprised if in 5 days when I release this publicly to the rest of the public audience for my YouTube channel, if there's other tools out there that are already doing the cool things that I've been talking about Disco being able to do. We'll see, but it wouldn't surprise me. So with all that said, I don't know, maybe in 5 days people will be like, no, just stick with Stable Diffusion and skip Disco or whatever that is. But for now, I'm still kind of leaning toward using Disco because I think you get more interesting results by playing with stuff. I also think, as we've seen, Stable Diffusion really wants that realism. So asking for a dog riding a dolphin, it just keeps generating dolphins. You want a dolphin, right? You want a dolphin, you want a dolphin. And you have to kind of prompt it away from that. So just be aware of that. I will have also seen a bunch of Twitter threads on how Stable Diffusion differs in the way you prompt it from Midjourney, from the way you prompt it from Disco. I'll try to find some resources on that and maybe drop them in for us. But again, every new tool is going to require slightly different prompting engineering processes, which is just a lot of time. So if you've gotten comfortable with Disco, which I kind of have, I might stick with it and see how far it goes. And then we'll see if Stable either overrides it or if Disco ends up adopting the models or that sort of thing. So that's kind of my take on the first day of Stable Diffusion. But I also know that things will be happening very, very quickly within this. Last shout out, if you haven't checked out my video yet for Dream Studio, it's probably up by now by the time I stop this recording. I'm also going to do a Hugging Face space demo. I'm just going to kind of go all across the gamut. I'm not teaching right now, so I'm actually I think I've got some time to record a bunch of videos. So hopefully you'll see a bunch of videos either for you on the Patreon or on the YouTube membership channel, maybe also some public videos. So with that, thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you found some good use out of it and are maybe understanding how Stable Diffusion works.